Across Ireland and in Irish diaspora communities from Boston to Sydney, you'll hear the term. It describes a person with quintessentially Irish heritage, but with a striking atypical appearance, jet black hair, dark brown eyes, and olive-toned skin that tans easily. They are the Black Irish. For generations, this look has been the subject of family lore and romantic speculation. Was it the survivors of the Spanish Armada, swept onto Irish shores in 1588, the legacy of ancient Phoenician traders, or even a trace of the mysterious Milesians from the Holy Land? The stories are poetic, but genetics is a field of data, not poetry. Today, we're solving a centuries-old family mystery and confronting the uncomfortable truths, shocking origins, and political firestorms hidden within the DNA of the so-called Black Irish. Let's start with the most beloved legend. In 1588, the mighty Spanish Armada was defeated by the English and scattered by storms. Dozens of ships were wrecked on the rocky coasts of Western Ireland. Survivors, the story goes, climbed ashore and blended into the local Gaelic population, leaving behind a legacy of dark features. It's a fantastic tale of romance and resistance, but genetically, it's a shipwreck. The timeline is wrong. Descriptions of dark-haired, dark-eyed Irish people appear in texts centuries before the Armada. More importantly, the math doesn't work. Even if every single Spanish survivor married and had children, they would represent a minuscule, localized genetic blip, not enough to create a widespread, persistent physical trait across the entire island. Modern genetic studies, scanning for Iberian DNA in Irish populations, find no significant spike that correlates with the 16th century. The Armada myth, while stirring, is not the source. It's a historical coincidence draped over a much older truth. Here's the first genetic bombshell. The earliest inhabitants of Ireland were not the fair-skinned, red-haired people of modern stereotype. Ancient DNA from a 4,000-year-old Bronze Age woman from Balahi, Northern Ireland, and other Neolithic remains tells a different story. The original Irish farmers, who arrived from the Near East via Anatolia and Iberia around 4000 BC, carried the genetic variants for darker skin, dark hair, and brown eyes. The famous Celtic look, pale skin, red hair, blue eyes, arrived much later. The gene for red hair, MC1R variant, likely reached high frequencies in Ireland and Scotland due to genetic drift and perhaps some selective advantage in cloudy climates, but it was layered on top of this older, darker foundation. Therefore, the Black Irish appearance isn't an exotic import. In many cases, it is a relic. It is the re-emergence of Ireland's oldest genetic layer, a throwback to its original pre-Celtic inhabitants. The true mystery isn't why some Irish are dark, it's why we're surprised by it. So, if not the Armada, where does the Mediterranean link come from? The true connection is not 500 years old, but over 5,000 years old. The ancestors of the Irish Neolithic farmers took a long coastal route from Anatolia, migrating across the Mediterranean basin. They spent generations in southern Europe, mixing with local populations before pushing north into Atlantic Europe. Their journey left a profound genetic signature. Irish DNA contains a significant component from these early European farmers, whose own roots were in the Mediterranean and Near East. This ancestry is what contributes to the potential for darker pigmentation, curlier hair, and other southern features. It's not a singular Spanish import, it's a broad, ancient Southern European heritage that is a fundamental part of being Irish. The Black Irish look is often just this ancient heritage expressing itself more strongly, bypassing the later, cooler-toned genes that became more common. But the story isn't purely a north-south axis. Another source of dark features comes from a surprising direction, the north. The Norwegian Vikings who raided and settled Ireland, particularly founding ports like Dublin, Waterford, and Limerick, were not all blonde. Historical sources describe them as diverse in appearance. More significantly, the Normans who invaded in 1169 were of Norse origin but had spent generations in northern France. They brought a genetic mix that included darker, continental European traits. These groups integrated into the Irish population, especially in the east and in urban centers. Their genetic contribution added another layer of complexity, introducing different variants for darker hair and eyes that had nothing to do with the Mediterranean. So a dark-haired Dubliner might be expressing a Norse or Norman ancestor as easily as a Neolithic one. Geography is fate. Ireland's most dramatic Black Irish phenotypes are often reported from the western seaboard, places like Connemara, Kerry, and Clare. This is not a coincidence. This region is part of what anthropologists call the Atlantic facade, the rugged, remote western edges of the British Isles that were less affected by later invasions like the Anglo-Saxons that swept through the more accessible east. These remote areas acted as genetic refuges, where the older pre-Celtic and early Celtic populations persisted with less mixing. The very isolation that preserved the Irish language also helped preserve a wider spectrum of Ireland's original genetic diversity, including the physical traits associated with its deepest ancestors. The West didn't get darker genes from outsiders, it simply kept more of the dark genes that were there from the start. So, when someone with Black Irish features takes a commercial DNA test, what do they find? Typically, they see a very high percentage of Irish and Scottish ancestry, often 95% plus. They do not see significant Spanish, Portuguese, or Italian percentages that would confirm the Armada myth. The revelation is in the older, deeper ancestry breakdowns offered by some services or scientific studies. Here, they might find elevated levels of Anatolian farmer or early European farmer ancestry, a component labeled Spanish and Portuguese that actually represents that shared ancient Atlantic migration route, not recent history. A distinct ancient Irish genetic cluster that simply has a higher frequency of alleles or a darker pigmentation. The test results debunk the Romantic legends but confirm a profound truth. Their appearance is a direct, unbroken link to the Stone Age builders of Newgrange, older than the pyramids. The Black Irish mystery is solved not by a single shipwreck, but by the slow march of prehistory. It is the story of Ireland's first settlers whose features were dark. It is the story of the island's position at the edge of Europe, where ancient genes found a refuge. It is a story of multiple migrations from the south, north, and east, all contributing to a genetic tapestry far more varied than the stereotype. The truth is that there is no Black Irish, there is only Irish, in all its beautiful, genetically grounded variety. If this resolution of a long-standing genetic mystery fascinated you, subscribe to the Footcast. We specialize in using hard science to separate family legend from historical fact, revealing the incredible stories written in our DNA. What other population myths should we tackle? The Cherokee princess legend? The royal blood of Roma people? Let us know in the comments. Share this video to replace myth with understanding. Thanks for watching.